I'm a 32-year-old man and my wife is 20. We've been together for 7 years. At first, everything was wonderful. She was my soulmate, and I was hers. We liked the same things: sports, movies, even the same views on social issues. More on that later. Travel destinations. All of it. We were genuinely happy for years. But gradually, my wife began acting distant, even a little cold. Let me give you a better picture. We've shared 7 years together. For 5 years, things were, as I've said, happy. I honestly felt like I was her entire world, and she was mine. We'd go out with friends, and I'd always catch her smiling at me across the room. When we talked with her friends, she'd look out for me. She took care of me when I was sick, just like I did for her. She always had my back. She was my anchor, my closest friend, my one and only. We'd do so much together: hiking, camping, staying at wildlife resorts, going to football games, all the things we loved. We had a real passion for each other, and I never wished for her to be any different. When we first met, she was gorgeous, brunette, curly hair, an amazing smile, and a sweet nature. She always said similar things about me. She made me feel important. Never once did I feel like I wasn't enough or had any reason to doubt myself. I'll talk more about that later. As I mentioned, things were really good for over 5 years, but then everything began to shift when her new supervisor joined at her job. I'll call him Margus, 30. At first, she would come home and bring up Margus a lot. She'd say he was funny and could make everyone feel good. Naturally, I felt a bit thrown off because she'd usually start by asking about my day, but now she talked about Margus right away. Still, I brushed it off at the time. Maybe it was just someone new at her workplace. She'd seen the same people for years, so when Margus started, it probably felt fresh. But as weeks went by, my wife kept growing more distant and secretive. She'd stay out late for work nights, which never used to bother me since she'd done it before. But then, we were supposed to go to a mutual friend's place for drinks. This friend was having a rough time. He'd just been diagnosed with a serious illness. My wife, as I said, was usually such a rock, so caring and empathetic. So, when we learned about our friend Daniel, 32, there was no hesitation about going over to support him. The night finally came, but my wife was running. Late after a work night out, I tried calling her a few times. No answer. I sent her texts. Still nothing. After waiting, I decided to head over to Daniel's by myself. Daniel and I talked about how he was adjusting and coping, and honestly, my heart went out to him. He's a great guy to go through something this cruel. When I got home, I was furious. My wife still wasn't home. No missed calls, no messages. I started getting worried, thinking maybe she'd had an accident. So, I called her co-worker, Jane, 28, who I get along with. I asked if Kelly, my wife, was out with her. Jane told me she'd gone home already, and it was just Kelly and Margus left out. I was angry, really angry. We'd known Daniel for years, and she'd skipped seeing our friend to hang out with a guy she barely knew. I kept telling myself there had to be some reason for this. I waited up for her. When she eventually came home, she found me in the living room, waiting. "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" she asked. I just looked at her, confused, and said, "Daniel." She looked shocked. "I'm sorry, I forgot. I was out with work friends and lost track of time." She sounded sincere, and since she and Daniel are close, maybe she really did forget. I did ask who she'd been out with. She said, "Jane, Sophie, and the usual." I asked, "Not Margus?" "Oh yeah, he was there," she replied. I pressed on, thinking about what Jane had said. "Did everyone stay out until the end?" "Yes, it was a good night," she answered. The next day, I was still angry, but I didn't say anything. She'd never lied to me before, or let anyone down, so it was hard to accept she'd ditch our sick friend for a guy she barely knew. Over the next few days, she kept acting distant, coming home late and barely showing me any affection. I kept thinking maybe it was just work stress, but even when she was home, she'd be glued to her phone. I asked, "Who are you always texting?" "Just a friend from work," she said. "Is it Margus?" I asked. "No," she replied, but then said, "But what's the issue if it is?" I'd never seen her so defensive, but I wanted to be honest. So I said, "Because you never stop talking about him. He's only been working with you for less than a month, and yet you act like he's the greatest person you've ever met. Your whole face lights up whenever you mention him, so much that you forgot about Daniel." I could tell my words hit a nerve. She answered, "No, I don't idolize Margus. He's just a friend and I've already apologized to Daniel." But that wasn't enough for me. I waited until she fell asleep. Then I checked her phone. To my shock, her messages were full of explicit texts between her and Margus. I took photos of their conversations for proof. A week passed, and the late nights and lack of affection continued. I talked to a friend about my worries, and he told me maybe I was being paranoid, and suggested I try something new, like making her a surprise dinner. I liked the idea, so I texted my wife, asking if she was free after work. She replied, "No, I'm free." Our conversation was nice, so I cooked dinner, got a good bottle of wine, and bought her flowers. When she came home, she looked sad. She said she was sorry, but a coworker was throwing a surprise birthday party for another colleague, and that was the only night they could do it. I shook my head in anger and frustration. She left the house right after I pulled away. That was the last straw. After months of doubt, I needed proof. I know you're probably thinking, "Man, can't you see the signs?" I could, but I was hoping I was wrong, hoping it was just a bad dream. The truth was, I was scared to find out. Still, I had to know. So I did something I'm not proud of. I put a tracker in her car. I pretended to be working late so she wouldn't suspect anything. When she got home, I watched from a distance as she left again in her car. I followed her as she drove out of town and eventually pulled into a quiet, secluded parking lot. She waited until another car pulled up next to her. It was him, Margus. She got out and got into his car. It was obvious what was happening. I filmed her getting into his car so I'd have evidence against her. For the next few days, she acted completely normal, like nothing was going on. I knew she didn't realize I'd found out, but she kept pretending everything was fine, even smiling and holding my hand at breakfast. One day, when she left for work and I had the day off, I decided to check her laptop for anything suspicious. Nothing. But when I searched her drawers, yes, I know, not my proudest moment, I found an iPad under her bottom drawer. It wasn't mine, so I figured she'd bought it herself. Luckily for me, it didn't need a password. Maybe she forgot to lock it. But I got lucky. I opened it and started looking. What I saw next shattered me. I looked for messages but didn't find any. But then I found a folder, photos of my wife, naked, in sexual poses for him. There were so many. But that wasn't all. There were videos too. I know I shouldn't have watched, but I did. The videos were graphic. Marge sleeping with my wife, and she was clearly enjoying it. But it didn't stop there. There were videos of her with another woman and another man, with Margus there too. But the other man, he made me sick. He was a bigot, covered in disgusting tattoos of hateful groups. Just seeing him turned my stomach. Apparently, Margus agreed with his views, which made sense in the worst way. I couldn't believe my wife was with a man who shared such hateful beliefs. She always hated any form of bigotry, just like me. Why would she do this? What did she see in him? Watching her so willing to be part of this tore me apart. Throughout our marriage, we'd talked about fantasies, but never followed through. As a man, sure, I'd thought about threesomes, but my wife always said she'd never do it. Never sleep with another woman. Never do anything that made her uncomfortable. I never pressured her, and it never bothered me that she didn't want those things. I loved her. So to see her doing things with them she never did with me, it broke me. It hurt more than I can say. I watched all the videos. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. I copied the videos and pictures to my laptop as evidence of her infidelity, because that was all that mattered to me now. I wanted her out of my life. I just didn't understand why she did it. Why she refused my fantasies, but jumped into his. What made him so special? Why was she into a man I thought she despised because of what he represented? Anyway, I talked to Daniel about everything. He's a good man and a loyal friend. He couldn't believe I was talking about my wife. He was disgusted by her behavior, but he'd also noticed her change. I told him I wanted to divorce her, and he understood. He said I already had enough to support my case. He told me confronting her and Margus would be pointless because she'd already made up her mind. He said I needed a fresh start, to find someone real, not just a shadow of the woman I thought I'd married. Like me, Daniel can't stand hateful racists, and he just shook his head that my wife could do this. Daniel's actually known my wife even longer than I have. After talking with Daniel, I finally felt like I had some control. For months, it seemed like she was the one with all the power, and I'd been too afraid to face the truth. I hadn't confronted her directly when I was suspicious, simply because I was scared of what might happen. At the time, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to leave her or try to fix things. But after seeing the videos, pictures, and messages, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I went to a lawyer and filed for divorce. I'd had enough. My wife kept pretending nothing was wrong, still glued to her phone, still going out late, probably with him, but I didn't care anymore. I had to wait 3 weeks for the divorce papers to come through. When I finally got them, I decided to move out. Luckily, we were renting, and our lease was up in 3 months. I was ready to pay until then, but I just needed to get away. The day came. She left for work. I told her I needed to go in later to cover for short staffing. She just shrugged and said, "Okay." No goodbye, no hug or kiss. But honestly, I'd gotten used to that months ago. Once she was gone, I packed up my essentials and left the divorce papers on the kitchen table, along with my wedding ring. That was it. I went to stay with my old university friend Adam, who lived in another city. I was grateful to be with him, but even more grateful to be far away from her, our city, and our entire shared circle of friends. I wanted nothing to do with any of it. I told my parents what had happened. They were shocked, but they completely understood. I didn't go into every detail. There was no need. All I could think about was that I was finally free. I figured my wife would feel the same, since it was clear she wanted Marjuice. I hoped the divorce would go through quickly. But later that night, my phone was blowing up with calls and messages. It was my wife. I was surprised because I honestly thought this was what she wanted. But I couldn't have been more wrong. I didn't talk to her. I had no interest. I read her messages. Every single one was, "I'm sorry, I love you, please can we talk," and so on. This went on for hours. I blocked her number and deleted all my social media accounts. I spoke to my lawyer about having her sign the divorce papers, but she hadn't signed. She got in touch through email instead. I wanted to keep at least one way to communicate, since I still needed the divorce finalized. She sent me another email, again, all apologies, saying we needed to talk. I replied, "No, all I want is the divorce." She wrote back that she didn't want one, that I was the only man she'd ever loved, and that Marjuice meant nothing. What's ironic is I never even told her why I left, but she obviously knew. Her guilty conscience and seeing her beg for forgiveness actually felt satisfying. I talked to Adam, and he told me I could stay as long as I needed. I was really grateful for his support, but he also said that eventually I'd have to face her. He said that I'd left without getting any answers, and no matter how much I avoided it, one day I'd need to hear her out. Deep down, I disagreed with Adam. Why should I have to talk to her? She hadn't cared about my feelings for months. She supposedly cared about Daniel, our sick friend, but not about me. So why should I give her the chance to explain? I knew I was being stubborn, but I was also furious that my wife was now trying to reconcile. Honestly, I really thought she'd just sign the papers and move on with him. Now I was even more confused, especially since my wife was asking to meet. I have a great therapist. I talked about the affair, the pictures, the videos, everything. I mentioned my wife wanting to meet before she'd sign. My therapist was blunt. She said that by leaving without telling my wife why, deep down I wanted her to plead and worry, that I kept telling yourself she wouldn't care. But deep down, you wanted her to care. You wanted her to feel some of the hurt she put you through. Still, meeting her would mean giving up a little of your control, and my therapist was right. She added, "If you do decide to meet in person, you need to ask the hard questions. Even if the answers are painful, you do have questions, and you're not really moving on. You're just running away, scared that the last 7 years were a lie." Like I said, she was blunt. That was 2 days ago. My wife is determined to meet, and she says she won't sign the divorce papers unless we meet first. I spoke with my parents and close friends about it. My dad said I could try to force her to sign, but that might take months. If she's even open to signing after we talk, it could be worth a shot. Adam agreed. I decided I'd meet with my wife, though nervous doesn't even cover it. How should I approach it? What should I ask her? Should I be open, or keep my guard up? Any help or advice would mean a lot. I asked for some advice online knowing I'd get it. Thriller Gorilla replied, "Well, I'm a big believer in talking things out face to face. With that said, Tell her flat out that the condition for meeting is her signing the divorce papers. If she refuses, don't meet her. Just ghost her and take the long way through the divorce process without having to see her again. If she agrees, then meet, but let her do most of the talking. Keep your questions and comments to a minimum and keep your emotions in check. Show zero emotion, good or bad. If you feel yourself getting emotional, excuse yourself, take a breather, and get back on track. Remember, your main goal is to get those papers signed. You already know everything you need to know. This meeting is for her, not you. She wants forgiveness, absolution, and a way to walk away with less shame and guilt. She wants out from being held accountable. You're trading her a little less shame in return for her signature. If she's reluctant to sign, suggest working on the relationship. After the divorce, make her believe there's still a chance for you both. Yes, it's a lie, but you want that signature, so say what you need to say. Once she's signed, expose the affair at her workplace. Call HR directly. She's no longer your ally, wife, friend, or soulmate. She's an adversary in a legal matter, nothing more. Update. I'm sorry it's taken me longer than I'd hoped to share an update. I planned to post the next day, but life got in the way. Before I go on, I want to thank everyone who gave advice. I read every single response, and I really appreciate it. Honestly, I was overwhelmed by all the support. A few points about my earlier posts. The story was set just over a year ago, and this part is catching up to now. Sorry for not making that clear. This update brings things up to the present, but I'll section off each part with update headings. I don't even know where to begin. A lot has happened since I posted. First, I moved back to where I used to live. Living with Adam was great, but eventually, I needed to go back. My soon-to-be ex is still in our old house, so I rented a flat just outside town. I told my wife I was coming back, and she seemed glad, but I made it very clear I would not be living with her. She understood, though she tried the old, "we can just sleep in separate rooms" line. I refused. I also told her I wouldn't tell her where I lived, even though she tried to find out. She still wants to meet, and I do too. We arranged a time and a place, a neutral venue, so to speak, near the beach. There would be people around, but not too many, just in case things got heated. I wanted to meet outside, just the two of us. Some people online suggested I bring a friend, but I didn't think that was needed, though I appreciated the advice. I did agree with the idea of recording the conversation, which I did. Before meeting, I emailed my soon-to-be ex with some rules. If she didn't follow them, there would be no chance of reconciliation. The rules were simple. 1. Answer every question I had, honestly. 2. No deflection or vague answers like, "it just happened" or "I'm not sure." I wanted details. 3. If she stormed off before answering everything, it was over. No reconciliation. 3. Answer honestly, even if you think your answer will hurt me. 4. Don't be late. If you are, there's no chance of reconciliation. We picked the place and time. Now it was just a waiting game. I went back to my flat, and the next day I caught up with some other friends. They treated me like I was Daniel, which I understood. I got hugs and a lot of support, which meant a lot. But it seemed like word of our breakup had already spread. I wondered how so many knew. I'd only told a few people. But obviously, my wife told her family and friends, so the domino effect happened. They didn't know the full story though. Not about the texts, photos, or videos. Not even my wife knows that I have those. As far as she's concerned, I left because she spent too much time with Marjus. She doesn't know what evidence I actually have. She just thinks her husband got upset and she broke things off with Marjus. I told my therapist about the upcoming meeting. She advised me to ask certain questions to get real insight into what happened. I'll explain those later. The day of the meeting finally arrived. I was nervous before, but now I was a wreck. Not because I wanted her back, but because seeing her would remind me of him, and I was worried I'd lose control. I drove to the beach early, really early. I tried to soak in my surroundings, and honestly, it was a perfect day. The sun was shining, people were out taking their morning walks. I picked a spot, and then out of nowhere, I turned to see my soon-to-be ex walking toward me. She was smiling, and looked great, clearly made an effort, but she seemed a little worn out and stressed. I didn't feel any sympathy. She came over and tried to hug me, but I put my arm out to stop her. She looked at me as if she understood. We sat down and settled in. She tried to start with small talk, but I wasn't having any of it. My phone was already recording. I started with, "When did you first kiss him?" She answered, "The first week, on Friday." "When did you first sleep with him?" "The same day, Friday." "Where?" "At his place." "Did you ever do it in my bed?" "Does it matter?" I looked at her and reminded her of the email. She had agreed to answer everything. She started tearing up, finally admitting it happened several times, usually when I was out. Our neighbor had even seen him but thought he was just a co-worker, so thought nothing of it. She kept apologizing, but I raised my hand for her to stop. I kept going. "Did you tell him about me? About being married?" She said yes, but it was all a blur at the time. My therapist had told me to ask a specific question, so I did. "When you first met Marjus, how soon did he ask about me?" She was confused. "What do you mean?" "When you talked, did he ask about me? Did he want to know how long we'd been married, if we were happy, that kind of thing?" She paused, then said yes. "He did ask about our marriage, and if we were happy." "Why didn't that strike you as strange? You'd just met him and he's asking about your marriage." "No, I just thought he was being friendly and curious, not weird." I let it go for now. I'd come back to the relevance later. After a few minor questions, I decided to get to the bigger ones. I wanted to ask about the videos and photos, but I eased into it. I brought up a recent racist attack at a local store. If you've read my earlier story, you'll know about Marjus and his friends' views. I kept it casual. "Did you hear about the incident last Thursday?" "What incident?" "The bigots who trashed the shop, sprayed racist graffiti everywhere." "That's awful," she said. "Yeah, it is. I can't stand racists. Can you?" She looked confused for a moment, then it hit her. She realized I knew about the videos and photos. She started to cry, and it went on for about 5 minutes. I pressed, "Why would you even go near men like that?" She was red-faced, crying, struggling to regain her composure. "It's not what it looks like, or what you think." "What? I think? What am I supposed to think? What was it about this man that made you disrespect your grandfathers who fought in World War II, ignore your friends, and treat me like I'm worthless?" At this, she was shaking, eyes full of tears, but she answered. He was the new boss in her department. He was outgoing and funny, made people feel good about themselves, and a lot of women liked him. Even when he first started, he had that effect. But when he started paying attention to me, I felt special, like he'd chosen me. "What does that even mean?" I asked. "You wanted honesty, so I have to be honest. When we first talked, he told me straight out he was interested in me. After just a few days," I interrupted. "Yes, that's what I'm saying. He had a way about him, right from the start, of making people feel happy. But when he looked at me across the office, it made me feel incredible. Every time he spoke to me, saying things like, 'You're the only interesting person here,' I felt singled out. I felt like he chose me." She paused. "I know it sounds pathetic. I know I'm being weak, but you have to understand how it was when he arrived. He was good-looking, confident, smooth, just right. He had this presence. And when he smiled at me, I'd melt." She went on. "He could have had any woman at the office. At the time, all the girls wanted him. They talked about him non-stop. I never believed he'd pick me." "So, you wanted to be picked?" I asked. "No, not at first. I thought it'd just be harmless flirting or something, but he made it clear he wanted more. And then, that was it. It was like he became this addiction I couldn't shake. Again, I know it's pathetic, but let me finish. When he talked to me and gave me those compliments, I was stunned, really flattered. My confidence shot up from 60 to 1,000. I kept thinking, he could have anyone, but he's choosing me. He kept saying it was me. Was you? I don't get it," I said. "He made me feel like I was the one, the only one he wanted, the one he was meant to be with. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I'm just being honest." She hesitated, then went on. "I can't deny I was attracted to him. It was obvious, and I see that now." "Wait, you thought you were hiding it?" I said. "Well, at the time, yes. In the beginning, he overwhelmed me with compliments, and the other girls were jealous. That gave me a thrill. The more time I spent with him, the more I wanted. I wanted to feel like a queen. I know you treated me well. I was lucky, but Marjus was just something else. I got a rush from seeing the other women envy me. I did ask for honesty, I reminded her. She nodded. I really thought I was so lucky to have this man. But the longer it went on, the more he changed. But I couldn't stop myself. You asked what I meant. He was controlling. He got to know me, but then he'd push me to do the opposite of what I liked. The videos and pictures, those were his idea. And yes, I knew about his friends and their beliefs, but I didn't want to challenge him or Margus. I didn't want to make him angry. He'd say things like, "If you can't make me happy, someone else will." He always had this attitude like, "You should know how lucky you are." She was upset. At the time, I panicked and did everything to keep him happy. I wanted to please him. Nothing else mattered. So I did anything for him. "You obviously saw that," she said, looking at me. "Of course I did. And the fantasies?" I asked. I know. But like I said, he was a drug I couldn't quit. The more I saw him, the more I wanted him. He made me believe you were the bad guy, that you were holding me back and didn't respect me. I know now that's not true," she sobbed. "But that's why I did everything he told me to do. Even when he criticized you, I couldn't push back because I was hooked. And that makes it okay? Treating me like nothing, bailing on dinner, camping, all of it," I said. "No, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I know how I treated you, and I'll never forgive myself. But I did it. Even when I was skipping dinner or bailing on you, I knew I was hurting you, but I couldn't stop. He kept telling me I deserved better, that I should be treated like a queen. So, the more he took me out to fancy places, VIP shows, expensive jewelry, the more I started resenting you. Every time he did something, he'd bring up your failures. I let myself believe it, and that's why I was so cold to you. I thought you'd fail me, and he hadn't. I know that's not true, but during that time, he was so influential, and I just believed everything he told me," she continued. "It was only when I saw the divorce papers and your wedding ring on the table that something finally clicked inside me. I know you probably don't believe me, but I really am done with Margus. Immediately. I know I don't deserve any credit for that, but I'm genuinely ashamed of what happened. I can't even imagine what it was like for you. I realize now that I neglected you, made you feel worthless, but before that, I couldn't see it. I only saw it after I saw the papers. I'm ashamed that I picked this horrible man over you." I looked at her. I hadn't expected these kinds of answers, but she seemed truly sincere. Still, I replied, "Aside from the affair, you know what the real problem is. At the beginning, you wanted the affair because you said he chose you. You said he was like a drug, but millions of people get clean. They realize they have a problem, and they get help. You didn't. You kept going. The only reason you're here now is because I was your safety net, and now that's gone. There's no way a spouse can say, 'I love you,' while making their partner feel inadequate." She insisted she hadn't done that. "No, you did. For 11 months you made me feel worthless. You saw it happening. You saw me eating more, shutting myself off, losing who I was. All the while, you were out every night, hitting the gym, buying new clothes, acting like a different person. You'd come home and look at me with contempt. During all that time, you wouldn't let me touch you or anything. You gave me nothing but coldness. Nothing but mental abuse. Maybe you didn't realize you were doing it, but you did. My best friend and soulmate made me hate myself." She was in tears again. "It got so bad, I started thinking things I didn't even want to say, out loud, but you get the idea." At that point, she was crying so hard I forgot we were in public. People were starting to stare, and I had to tell her to breathe. Once she calmed down, she kept pleading, saying it was Margus feeding her toxic thoughts about me. I had one last question. "Do you love him?" "No, I don't. I know you won't. Believe me, but I actually hate him as much as I hate myself." After a few hours of talking, she left, saying everything was true. I was the love of her life and so on. I just sat by the beach, lost in thought, thinking about whether she'd been groomed or conditioned. I mean, it made sense. After she met him, she completely changed. There was a reason my therapist wanted me to ask that question. She can't officially diagnose Margus, but she thinks he has sociopathic tendencies. That's why he asked about her marriage so early. He had an agenda. It's clear he chose my wife because he saw we were happy and solid. For people like him, The challenge is breaking up relationships and ruining lives. He'd never have gone after a single woman. There'd be no challenge. With my wife, it wasn't just her he controlled, but her whole circle, her friends and family. He turned her into everything she used to be against. And through her, he turned me into a depressed loner. My therapist said that's why I never confronted her about the texts and videos right away. I didn't have proof. And that's exactly how he and my wife set it up. He pulled the strings, but my wife went along with it. Sociopaths like to manipulate and control everything. When I followed her to the parking lot, he probably expected it. If I'd confronted them there, my wife would likely have taken his side on the spot, and he would have won. People with sociopathic tendencies have no empathy. They live for the suffering they cause others. Is it possible my wife was a victim of a sociopath? It fits, but part of me just doesn't care, though sometimes I care too much. Who was this guy, really? I kept telling myself I'd never seen one man come in and so completely wreck people's lives. But deep down, he seemed to be the full package. A boss making good money, 30 but looked 21, fit, and full of the confidence that made women turn their heads. Maybe my soon-to-be ex was telling the truth that she ended things with him after I left. I found out later, after I'd moved out, that my neighbor saw Margus coming around to my house, demanding to speak to my soon-to-be ex. He did this a few times. She told me at our meeting that he was acting like a possessive, even abusive husband. My therapist said sociopaths can't handle rejection, especially when they lose control. My wife dumped him, and he became unstable. Why? My therapist said it's simple. My wife chose me over him. Lucky me. He manipulated her for less than a year, and she still found the strength to end it. That clearly ruined his plans. I contacted HR about my wife and Margus. Turns out, other people had already reached out to HR as well. Word about the affair was spreading. He left his job shortly after my wife and I spoke. I don't know where he went, and I don't care. My wife also left, right before she was about to be forced out. Apparently people at work weren't happy with her, and neither were her parents. She moved back in with them and is relocating. She's now seeing a psychologist, which she definitely needs. I'm still in touch with her family and some friends. They try to encourage me to meet my soon-to-be ex again, but that's not going to happen. She needs to focus on herself and her recovery, and even her family agrees that Margus did a real number on her. The divorce will be final in a few weeks. Some people said she wouldn't sign after our meeting, but I had to go. I had to know why she did it. Do I feel better? In a way, yes. My wife was as honest as she could be. Looking back, the pattern of the affair makes sense. My soon-to-be ex asked if there's any chance of reconciliation. I'll admit, the thought crossed my mind. Maybe if she really was the victim of a manipulator, maybe we could try again. But how could I ever trust her? If I took her back, I'd always be thinking about him, always feeling like I didn't measure up. I'd always feel second best, no matter how much she swore I was her soulmate. Even after all her assurances, I know that life with her would never be the same. If there's a moral here, it's that cheating is always wrong. It deeply wounds the partner left behind, and cheaters are truly selfish. They only confess if they get caught or find divorce papers left on the kitchen table. As for me, I don't think I'll ever marry again. The pain of this affair has cut too deeply. I still feel inadequate, like I'm not enough, though I've started going to the gym again, getting outdoors, hiking, and camping with friends. I'm trying to stay active, trying to move forward, but I still hate it. I hate how easily my soon-to-be ex fell for him, hate that he chose my wife, and keep wondering, why her? But I know asking myself these questions is pointless now. What's done is done, and the damage is permanent. I still have my job, and moving to the edge of town has been a good thing. I'm not the type to move far away, though I get why some people do. My work and my social circle have been supportive, and I don't want to give them up. If I'd relocated completely, I'd feel like they won, and I refuse to be a victim. My therapist keeps reminding me, healing takes time. Just be patient. Well, that's it. Not much left to say, so this will probably be my last post. Thank you. To everyone who commented on my last blog, I read every single message and truly appreciate all the advice and support. Some closing comments. Salvador M1 wrote, "You, sir, are the ultimate alpha. The way you handled the situation was flawless. Also, what an amazing therapist you have. Keep her and keep healing. I'm sure you will. Cranach wrapped things up. While I do believe her manipulation and conditioning played a role, it doesn't change the fact that she made a choice to cheat on you that very first Friday. Back then, she wasn't manipulated or conditioned. Those things take time. She'd been a loving and caring wife before. No, she wanted it to happen and chose not to break up with you but to cheat. She decided that he was more important than you, which set her up for everything that followed. The humiliation and abuse you experienced later may have been her being manipulated, but that first decision, to cheat, was all hers. I applaud you for meeting with her and listening too. All she had to say. Most people couldn't have done that. Stick to your decision. Divorce her, and after that, never see her again. Sometimes the damage is just too much to ever be repaired. And this is one of those times. Take your time, focus on healing, and be proud of yourself for getting out of that abuse. That's the biggest lesson to take from this. Do it for yourself. Even in a time of deep pain, when the person you loved most betrayed you so completely, you stood up for yourself and did what needed to be done to escape. And in your case, you managed to do it with your dignity still intact. Remember, you're worth so much more than being treated that way. You